on Gold FM.
A very good evening. This is Avanindra Som and you're listening to the news in detail on Gold FM. In your news headlines, revelations by Gammam Pilav East attack mastermind coming soon. Did Sri Lanka prepare for a possible external shock?
This is a very prime example of an external crisis. External crises do cause balance of payments crisis.
Unplanned rollout of a system caused QR struggles, says tech expert. Passenger buses and farmers given slack on QR fuel allowances. 2 drug hauling vessels caught in southern seas. Starmer working with allies to keep Strait of Hormuz open.
The top story on Gold FM.
As the conflict in the Middle East intensifies, Sri Lanka finds itself at the mercy of global supply chains. Economist Talal Rafi, who spoke to Gold FM, argues that while the QR system is a vital tool for controlling consumption during a war-induced supply crunch, it cannot function in a vacuum. He warns that without parallel work-from-home mandates and school holidays, the 15-litre limit will create a logistical deadlock for the workforce.
So I would say that this is a very positive development, putting the QR system, because there has to be some sort of a control on consumption. Because as you know, the current war in the Middle East doesn't look like it's ending anytime, because the objectives change and it seems to be intensifying. But even if the Strait of Hormuz was opened by this week, it would still take time for everything to get back to normal. So the QR system is definitely a positive development. But one thing I would like to add is that, having the QR system, for example, letting cars have 15 liters a week, trucks have 15 liters, or buses have a certain amount, but at the same time, not having the work from home or not giving leave to schools, universities, this is going to cause an issue. So this should be in parallel. There should be work from home mechanisms, and at the same time, I believe that schools should be given leave early, because there are, of course, holidays coming. Of course, they can be pushed in before that time. Because, for example, if you have 15 liters for a car, and then it's not really enough to go to work 5 days a week, or pick up your kid. So it will only be sufficient for 2 or 3 days. So the rest of the day, most of the people are going to be using trucks. So then the demand increases for that. But at the same time, whether it cars through trucks, they are also allowed only 15 liters. So that is always going to cause a dilemma. A lot of people will be unable to go to work. Children would be unable to go to school. So this is going to cause an issue. So I feel that the QR system is positive, but this should be followed up with other arrangements.
The most alarming part of the analysis focuses on the raw numbers.
Fuel is one of the largest imports for us. Around $4.5 billion is projected. The cost of fuel import alone is going to be $4.5 billion, according to the IMF report last December for this year. But this is before the whole Strait of Hormuz crisis. So right now, with the present prices, it's almost around 50% higher than it was prior to the whole Iran-Middle East war. If this price is sustained throughout the year, for example, it could add another close to $2.5 billion to our current account, which is not sustainable. So even if this continues for another 3 months, this average price at $100, close to around $500 to $600 million hit to the current account. Remember, Cyclone Ditwa, according to the IMF, was causes hit of $700 million to our current account. So I'm just saying if it's at $100, but if it goes to 150 and above, even few months of it can cost over $1 billion.
Rafi went on to say the crisis isn't just about the fuel pump.
Also, to be noted is that 50% of our power, at least for February, came from renewable energy. But about 20% still comes from oil. So if the prices go up, electricity can also go up prices there. So at the same time, when many countries are also going to switch to coal. So considering that about a quarter or slightly above that of our energy comes from coal prices can also increase. So this can definitely have an impact on the electricity prices in the coming weeks. So that will be another effect. But many other things, for example, gas prices prices going up. In addition to logistics, it's going to cause food prices to go up. But at the same time, most people don't realize, I've said this before, major fertilizers also come through the Strait of Hormuz. Like, for example, nitrogen fertilizer, urea, methanol. These are all about 1/3 of the global seaborne movement of these fertilizers are through the Strait of Hormuz. So since those are shut, it will definitely, not in the short term, but medium to long term, it can have an effect, because oil, the prices are not going that high, because a major reason is because oil, usually countries have strategic reserves. I mean, Sri Lanka has 1 month. For example, South Korea has around 7 months of storage. But other things like fertilizer are very seasonal and you can't store them for long. These are going to have an impact. So food prices, others can increase in the medium to long term if they especially affect the major food producing seasons.
Drawing a parallel to India's near bankruptcy in 1991, Rafi identifies the current situation as a textbook external shock.
This is a very prime example of an external crisis. Many countries are going to get affected, but in the past also, as I've said, external crises do cause balance of payments crisis. For example, India in 1991 came almost weeks close to declaring bankruptcy was due to Saddam Hussein invading Kuwait. So that the Middle East crisis and oil prices going up brought India almost close to default in 1991. So this is one sort of a external shock. But other shocks that I always say is Argentina in 2001. Of course, they have structural issues, but the thing that triggered it was because Brazil devalued its currency. Mexico, for example, in the 1980s was because the US increased interest rates. So this is a very prime example. One is, of course, external shocks is oil prices going up. Another external shock can be US interest rates going up. So these are examples. So another factor, of course, we have to keep in mind is that if inflation rises in the US and the US Federal Reserve increases interest rate, that could have a global impact.
This is the local news on Gold FM.
The National Transport Commission announced a new weekly fuel allowance for passenger buses ranging from 60 to 360 litres following widespread complaints regarding the current QR code system. Chairman of the Commission P.A. Chandrapala confirmed the adjustment today in Colombo as transport, health and tourism sectors report severe operational difficulties. Farmers gain a significant concession as the Commissioner General of Agrarian Development, Damika Ranatunga, waives the QR requirement for agricultural machinery, allocating specific amounts of diesel for ploughing and harvesting. Now, despite these changes, three-wheeler drivers claim their 15-litre weekly limit remains insufficient, leading many to hike passenger fares. Fishermen and vegetable transporters warn of imminent price increases for essential goods if supply constraints persist, while the tourism industry is also reporting continued disruptions to travel services. The Navy recovered a haul of cocaine weighing nearly 250 kilograms from a multi-day fishing trawl intercepted in the Beirul area. Officials initially detained 5 suspects along with the vessel this morning. Now, in the meantime, authorities also seized 123 kilograms of heroin worth about 3 billion rupees from another fishing trawler, Dinush, during a joint operation by the Sri Lanka Navy, the Coast Guard and the police south of Dondra. Investigators indicate the shipment was linked to overseas alleged drug dealer Kudu Salindu and was intended for an associate known as Pollatumodra Sarath. Former MP Uday Gammampila stated that the mastermind behind these attacks will be revealed to the country on the 31st of March. Speaking in Colombo today, the Pivitru Hellurume leader confirmed he completed a year-long investigation titled Uncovering the Mastermind of these Attacks. Gammampila claimed the tragedy served to manipulate governments and persecute war heroes for 7 years, vowing to end the deception. The government's rollout of the QR-based system for fuel purchases was ill-timed with the lack of adequate communication. This is the view of cybersecurity expert Asela Vaidyalankara on the country's hottest topic. Speaking to us, he also called into question the lack of a pilot project in this endeavour, especially considering the scale of the operation.
In complex system rollouts, it's always best, ideally what we say is either to have a pilot run, so you sort of learn from your mistakes from a smaller population. I think it's fairly naive to think that a system of this scale and magnitude will not have teething issues because it's of a national importance. And of course, this is a system, to be very frank, has by and large worked. And if you recall, when it was initially rolled out, despite having teething issues, once the system stabilized, it went on fairly well until it was powered down by the policymakers at the time. And now you've had it basically dusted off and restarted again. So I think where we are seeing the citizen issues and concerns is primarily because I feel prep time could have been a little more. I felt perhaps the rollout could have been structured a little better. Most of the time, the rollout decision or the system decision to launch is not with the tech guys. It's outside that sphere. And what happens is the technical guys will be told, oh, by the way, we're launching tomorrow. Yes, you can be ready reasonably, but of course, you can't foresee every problem that will come your way. And I think this is part of it that happened. There are very unique situations now. The last time the system was launched, up to now, new vehicles have come in, so there is that. Then vehicle transfers have happened.
He was also of the view that the government could have incorporated some private sector customer handling into the practice in this instance.
Timing could have been managed a little better. Perhaps if you given time for people to register without immediately making sure that they can go out and pump fuel, perhaps that gap would have helped smoothen out some of these system issues. The real connecting tissue here is common. Had there been people who would translate what the tech guys were saying into a language that was digestible to the general public, I think most of these things would have been smoothed now. Issue handling. Of course, Government Information Center did its best, but within a very short period of time, it sort of reached its capacity. That part, I think, could have been managed a little better, and I think steps are being taken for that, because generally, even for people might want to just ask. The system was done sometime back, people may not even remember. So then if somebody's there to handle those issues, ticket those issues, give people a feedback, listen, we've logged the issue, maybe come back in a couple of hours and say, look, this is what you need to do. I mean, there's enough and more private sector organizations who do that. So I think that sort of customer care or customer handling borrowed from the private sector would have been useful in this situation.
Now for some news in brief.
Sri Lankan Airlines has cancelled flights UL231 and UL232 between Colombo and Dubai, scheduled for March 16th, 17th, 18th, 21st and the 24th.
The business news on Gold FM.
The all-share price index of the Colombo Stock Exchange declined 753.29 points to close at 20,939.26 points yesterday. The S&P SL20 index also declined 199.72 points to close at 5,884.93 points. Total market turnover was 6.6 billion rupees. Crude oil prices dipped today as market attention shifted back to potential threats against energy infrastructure in the Middle East. Brent crude futures fell by 10 cents to reach $103 a barrel. Meanwhile, US West Texas Intermediate crude saw a fall of $2 and 8 cents, trading at $96 and 63 cents a barrel.
International news on Gold FM.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer confirmed that the UK is working with international partners to restore freedom of navigation through the vital waterway, but explicitly rules out a NATO-led operation. Speaking from Downing Street, the Prime Minister describes the task as an urgent priority following US-led strikes, which weaken the Iranian regime's military capability. Any British military commitment requires a clear legal basis and a thoroughly developed plan, according to the Prime Minister, who labels the deployment of troops as the toughest decision for any leader. This stance follows a discussion with the US President, who suggests 7 nations are currently in talks to police the route, while warning that a lack of allied support would damage the future of NATO. Over in Germany, Foreign Minister Jonathan Wadfeld dismisses the prospects of the alliance taking responsibility for the shipping lane, prioritizing the security of Ukraine as Russian energy profits rise. Meanwhile, the conflict enters a more intensive phase as the IDF launches targeted ground operations against the Hezbollah in Lebanon, alongside wide-scale strikes on Iranian infrastructure in Tehran, Shiraz and Tabriz. Inside Iran, authorities enforce a severe internet crackdown with threats of imprisonment for Starlink users as the government maintains a blockade against vessels linked to the US and Israel. while Tehran allows selective passage to neutral tankers to demonstrate its control over energy flows. Dubai International Airport begins a gradual resumption of flights following a drone-related fire at a nearby fuel facility earlier today. Now, in the meantime, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi maintains that the time for talks with Washington ended when the US attacks began.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
Warner Brothers Discovery secured a historic haul at the Oscars, led by the 6-win sweep of Best Picture winner one battle after another. Paul Thomas Anderson's drama also earned trophies for Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay. The studio's dark thriller Sinners followed with 4 awards, including a Best Actor win for Michael B. Jordan, and Jessie Buckley securing Best Actress for her role in Hamnet. The animated feature K-pop Demon Hunters made history with 2 wins, including Best Original Song for Golden.
Sports news on Gold FM.
The Pakistan Cricket Management filed an official complaint against international umpire Kumar Dharmasena following the third one-day international between Pakistan and Bangladesh. Team officials allege Dharmasena allowed Bangladesh to request a third umpire review despite the permitted time limit expiring. That's all the news for now. Stay tuned to Gold FM for the latest updates. This is Avinindra Soma for Gold FM News. Have a great evening.